Hi, this is Steve at blessedhopeforever.com. This is September 24, 2018, with yet another rapture date idea. To summarize where we are at as it regards these possibilities, I had hoped for 9/11. I've explained the problems that I have with October 11. My video Mind Blown revealed an amazing timeline for the year 2021, where I scared just about everyone, where I then looked at where the end of spiritual new year 5778 would take us, and now I'll do the same for Pentecost. Now, some may consider all that jumping around confusing or unsettling or indecisive. I just call it what it is, exploring all possibilities where that the most likely may just come into focus. None of us are drifting further away from the knowledge of the truth in all of this. The more we learn, the more we look at, the better. The more we fail, the better, because it allows us to better see the broader picture. It doesn't hurt us to look at every possibility. A fair analogy would be my test driving a number of cars to see how they run. And then, given where we are at this point, I've also began thinking outside the box. So this video will be one of those outside the box suggestions. It may not appear that Pentecost is thinking outside the box, but follow me along here and I'll tell you where I kind of went outside the box in my thinking. For our Father to give us so many patterns of sevens and they be meaningless is unimaginable. For Him to make this too easy would make us lazy. For Him to return before we are ready would be without purpose. For Jesus to arrive far into the future is extremely unlikely. But for Him to give a grace period seems in character. For His return to be perfect timing is to be expected. But for the numbers 7 and 8 to not hold their meaning would be confusing. And God is not the author of confusion. For so many to labor so long for nothing is, well, unbiblical. For us to hit on the exact date may not be possible, but then again it may be. For us to be way out of the ballpark would be unbeneficial. And for such wickedness as we see to be allowed to continue much longer would be unjust. For us to depart on a day that pertains to God's program for His people Israel, in my opinion, with all of my education, all of my background in theology, would be impersonal and indifferent to us, His body, the church. The church is unique. But for us to depart on a day that would make national Israel, both religious and secular Israel, jealous seems more than possible. My desire is to explore all possibilities. Now, you may call that an obsession. I simply call it what it is. There's nothing else that I'd rather do. So you can't fault me for that. We cannot say that God hasn't given us sufficient evidence to confirm what we long for is near. Yet in our eagerness, our anticipation, we long to be shown far more. You and I both know that that is true. But I would argue that what we have already been given is enough to convince even the world who doesn't know Christ that His coming is near. So let's again think outside the box. On my 7th birthday, I had to go a full year before I became 8. 7 had to finish itself out before I became 8. When I was 7 years and 300 days old, well, I was still 7. I probably looked forward to turning 7 the whole time I was 6, and I was 7 all the way up until the day that I turned 8. Therefore, when it comes to Israel being 70, well, we're tempted to think that this should be a marker indicating something should occur, even though, and this is the point I want to make, perhaps 70 has to complete itself for it to have meaning, just like 5-7-7-8 has to do. It's the difference between looking at the beginning of something as opposed to the end of it. That is all it is. Perhaps it's the end of something that's the most important. Just maybe while we've been focused on the beginning of 70 or the beginning of 5-7-7-8 or the beginning of something, these numbers have to come to full completion. Something has to end before something new starts. Think about it. I mean, we only come to Christ when we come to the end of ourselves. That's true of both regeneration as well as sanctification, or justification as well as sanctification. Do we not go to heaven when we come to the end of our lives? It is always death before life, especially when it comes to things like what we are talking about. We are always talking about finishing what we started, or we often hear the phrase, came to the end of the line. I told you I was going to finish what I started. We don't normally stop halfway through anything, not normally. It appears to be a universal fact of life, and I could give you examples of this for hours. So I want to draw your attention back to a few things that is all too easy to forget. This is but a fraction of all that we've been given, but it may help paint a better picture of where we are at. Perhaps the reason why he has yet to appear is to give us time to see everything more clearly, as well as remain true to the mathematical precision that he's known for, and the fact that God also finishes what he starts before doing something else. He's not willing that any should perish. We know 7 equals completion. We know 8 equals new beginning. 7 has run its course. 70-year exile, 70 elders, 70 years captivity, 70 prophetic weeks, the second temple destroyed, 70 AD. Add Israel's rebirth year, 1948, to 70, and it equals 2018. But that doesn't mean we can't be here in 2019, because 2018 is linked or tied to 5778, which ends March 8. The 7s associated with Trump, the enormous amount of 7s associated with that president. The numbers 7, 70, and 77, 7 years tribulation, Israel turning 77, the end of 7s where that 8 comes into the picture. New beginning. I find it interesting that from October 11, what many believe is the true Feast of Trumpets, to Pentecost, May 11, is 7 months exact. It's 7 months, 7 days from Israel set apart, October 4, to Pentecost. That's linked to Nehemiah 9, verses 1 through 38. In the 24th day of this month, that is on the 2nd day after the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, the children of Israel were assembled with fasting and with sackcloths the sign of mourning, earth or dust upon the head, outward tokens of mourning and humiliation, which they could not show during the festival. Their consciences having been fully awakened, and their hearts filled with grief for their sins, which they were not allowed to express in that time of public joy, they now resume with their former thoughts, and recalling their sins to mind, set apart a day for solemn fasting and humiliation. When I began to look back at the patterns of sevens, and this happened as a result of me sifting through the enormous amount of data that we've collected, which is only a part of what we have seen in relation to that number 7. It became quickly apparent to me that these patterns of sevens will soon run out. I seriously doubt we're going to be here to see more 777s or 700s or 70s or even sevens as it regards years. We appear to have left yearly patterns of sevens and are now down to patterns of sevens related to months and days. That should be a wake-up call, folks. I suppose that's the point I wanted to make. It appears to me that if we are not standing at the door of Christ's return, there is no place in the future for these patterns to continue. And if he doesn't return soon, it would appear that these patterns of sevens didn't really mean anything. Personally, I find it extremely difficult to accept either of those two possibilities. So after sifting through 2 years or more of documented data, I am forced to consider the possibility of 5778 playing out, the end of one thing and the beginning of another. Or that if we are still here, we enter the highest watch time ever, the highest watch time to date, March 8th, ending 5778. Not beginning it, but ending it. A window that will remain open through Pentecost, May 11, and Israel ending its 70th year, May 14. I want you to take note, Pentecost, if the rapture should occur, it would be May 11. May 11. Well, we know from history, we know that God sent the Holy Spirit 10 days after the ascension at Pentecost. They waited in the upper room 10 days and the Holy Spirit came. The Holy Spirit lives in us. The church departs. God sends the Holy Spirit. So Pentecost, rapture, May 11. Holy Spirit begins his ministry. 10 days later, May 21. May 21 plus 50 days to May 14, 2026. May 14. I believe God not turning his attention back to Israel until he has completed or ended his program for the church is a very strong indicator that what we may have missed in all this is that God finishes what he starts before moving on to the next thing in his divine plan for the ages. I love you all. I truly do. This is Steve. Keep looking up. Thanks for watching.